Hey, Brian.
John, it's been
Twice in 1 week. That's a new personal best for us, huh?
That is a new personal best for us. I have to say that I'm enjoying it. In fact, I was just thinking that with everything that's happening on Wall Street, we're going to need another special episode.
Well, why not? What goes up must come down and then perhaps goes up again. So, one shot is probably not even enough.
Exactly. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of Intersections. I have to tell you that these conversations, I hope you're enjoying them as much as John and I are. I tell you that every single time we go live, I leave all the smarter, all the more inspired. On Tuesday, I also left with a racing heart and high anxiety levels. And today's conversation is going to put us on a path towards promise, ideation, creativity, and innovation. So let me just welcome everybody to the show. This is Intersections, in case you didn't know, a weekly conversational jam session that dives deep into the intersections of technology, innovation, culture, and ideas. I would say each week, but we're sort of breaking that mold. Just every episode brings together diverse personalities, worldviews together in the service of greater understanding and unlearning. Before I introduce my co-host and co-founder, I would love to invite you to participate in the conversation. Do share your comments. Do share your questions. We'll do our best to feature them on screen and also answer them in real time. Also, please do share where you're tuning in from. It's important for us to understand that this isn't just an echo chamber, that we're all part of not only a bigger, more global conversation, but that these conversations can inspire you to bring change about wherever you are. And also, our producer, Gregarious, will be sharing links for you to check out past episodes online and also to join our newsletter, which I'm excited to announce soon. In terms of its debut. Coming soon. And so now it's my pleasure to introduce John Kao. The Economist has called him Mr. Creativity, a serial innovator. John, this isn't part of your formal bio, but I was speaking with someone yesterday who said, congratulations on having a show with John. You know, I was in a meeting with someone from Davos that had also known John for years, and he is a bona fide genius, and I don't say that lightly.
Oh my God.
So I guess that's one way to introduce you. And also, he is a Tony-nominated producer of film and stage. He's written the best-selling book, Jamming, the Art and Discipline of Business Creativity. He also chairs the Institute for Large-Scale Innovation. And let's just say that his mind has been formidable in the evolution and the shaping of the term innovation, but in probably a better regards in helping push industries, governments, and markets forward in the best possible light. John, welcome.
Thank you, Brian. And I will reciprocate by saying that it's a pleasure to introduce my missing half, professionally speaking. Brian was digital strategy before there was digital strategy. And if you think about digital marketing and social and application of digital technology to innovation, Brian's been at the forefront of these topics since the very beginning. He's a writer, he's a keynote speaker, he's a strategist, and even has a day job, which is Chief Innovation Evangelist for Salesforce. So we have these complementary perspectives, complementary networks, and it's always a great pleasure to do the show.
Thanks, John. And this show is all the greater for the guests that we have in every episode. So, John, I'll turn it over to you to bring in our first guest.
Well, I'm really excited to introduce Lindsay Stewart. I had a look at her company's website, which is Stringer without an E. She tells me that vowels are hard to come by, although I think it's probably a move in the sort of lean direction. And it's a fascinating company. And she also has a really, I would say, intense background. A lot of television production experience for local broadcast TV in Las Vegas, Fox News, Bloomberg, CBS, and then she went to business school. And I note, if I get the dates right, that while she was in business school in her second year, which is quite fashionable these days, she started Stringer, which has a fascinating business model and one that we're going to want to learn a lot more about. So, Lindsay, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I've never been called fashionable once, so it's a first. It's an exclusive.
I think that this notion that the MBA programs, I mean, I taught at Harvard Business School, and everyone thought, well, this is about people occupying senior positions in industry. But actually, the vast majority of Harvard MBAs and Wharton MBAs wind up being self-employed. You just kind of jumped the gun. So I think that's pretty
trend setting.
and the idea of using the MBA program as an incubator, I think, is even more on trend these days. So
how lots of nice, smart people that you get to access all in the same room. So
exactly, it's like the best incubator you could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
So I am fascinated by your background, and I'm fascinated by Stringer. The two are really, impossible, I think, to disentangle. Having had a bit of a media theme in my nonlinear career before, it seems to be a brilliant idea. Maybe you could just help with the meat and potatoes and tell us what Stringer is and how it's going, and then we can kind of get into the implications, because it seems like it could be a really big deal.
Yeah, we think so. But let me explain what Stringer is and say that there are two very important components of what the company holds inside of it. One is this dynamic videographer network. It's about 120,000 individuals strong, where our customers, our media customers, can come in and ask for the video that they want. And because of my news background, we started in news, and we started working in that real-time news environment where, an assignment editor or producer could come in and ask for video and get it an hour later or even minutes later. What we have, developed and what we have become is a place where you can come get any kind of video, really. It could be breaking news, but it also can be a sit down with a C-suite executive, in Washington, D.C. We have 3 tiers of videographer: Pro, Select, and Crowd. We started with Crowd, and then that's how we built the videographer network up to what it is today, with those various skills and core competencies. The other and equally important part of what we've built here at Stringer is a SaaS solution. It is a vertical SaaS solution that handles every single part of the creation of video. So we like to take that fastball of that videographer creator network, and that stands at the beginning of making a video. But then there are all these other tasks that need to take place before a final segment is produced. So we offer live capabilities. We offer audio correction. We offer editing, captioning, transcription, publishing, all of these things that any video creator wants all in one place. So that's what we are in essence. And we started with the video creator network, but we're seeing a lot of growth with our SaaS solution, as almost everyone wants to create video, whether it's for a product, a corporation, or a general media company.
So the SaaS solution sounds like the notion of the virtual studio come to life, right? Because you don't have to go to a physical location anymore. You can do, it sounds like, pretty much everything you need to do with your platform.
Yeah, and you can collaborate with your team who are all sitting on the couch in their pajamas, which, I don't know if we knew what the future held this time last year, but having cloud-based solutions where people can collaborate no matter where they are in the world has become, particularly relevant.
Yeah. And what's the distribution of your customer base? I mean, I assume that there's room for the Andy Curtises of the world who just want to make weird movies and, are looking for pungent documentary clips, but a lot of it is probably the meat and potatoes of news. I mean, what's the breakdown in terms of the kinds of people that come to you?
The kinds of people that come to me are multifold, but then there are these areas of focus. I'm a big believer of kind of putting your feet firmly on a beach, getting some recognition there, making customers delighted and happy, and then going to the next place. So where we are particularly focusing. One is the kind of general news business. We're there. We've been there for a while. And that is a nice growing business that we will keep around, forever, as long as people consume news, which I hope is a very long time. The next piece of it, and last year, well, actually 18 months ago, we went into kind of an exploratory phase where we said, all right, where is the next piece? Where is the next place we're going to send our boat? And what we have found is that e-commerce and merchants really is a wonderful place to play ball at this point. So those are our two areas of focus. However, we see a number of applications just coming through our front door as it revolves around corporate communications and other applications.
So, to what extent do you see a future in which AI and data science are going to intersect with Stringer? Because I can certainly see from what I know of the wavefront of innovation in those areas, that the ability to intelligently search and also to get pattern recognition of what's in that kind of global video landscape and make certain inferences that might lead you to some assets and not others could ultimately be quite valuable.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can tell you where our product is heading and then where I think it also could head, and the technologies that we keep an eye on because it will, enable our platform even more. One is just the fulfillment of requests. We've already built a model to show whether we think we can predict a request as it's coming in, when it will be fulfilled, and what the propensity, like how often a request like that will be fulfilled, gauging the other elements of kind of the network that involve real humans, of course. Mm-hmm. The other piece of it is a little more kind of automated in the post-production piece of it. So if you kind of take a look at how AI will inform color correction, that's a nice application there. And then I think one of the most robust ones that we've seen a lot of development in the last 6 years, quite honestly, with partners that we may choose to partner with, is image recognition. And so right now, I think that still has some development to come, but I know it will get there. And I know that there are a lot of really smart people applying themselves to that. So the minute you think about, for instance, our Stringer library has about 1 million clips in our archive, right? And the minute we can reliably go in and have all the metadata, basically what is in that video automatically populated, the applications are incredible. We've seen that with image, so still recognition being pretty reliable. And of course, then the next step is video. And then the next step is kind of general nouns with proper nouns, if that makes sense. So, so I think it's going to come along, and I'm excited for when it does, because we will definitely apply it within our system.
Do you think there's going to be an on-demand component ultimately where someone could come in and use your network as a customer insight, like design thinking tool, and say, show me rooms of 15-year-olds in 10 countries, and then have people go out and, do that? Or, if there's some global climate related problem, to have people go out and capture that for a client? Or is it mostly still going to be mostly about archival, creating the archive and then having people access it?
Well, the on-demand piece is at the core of our function already, and honestly, the first thing we ever created. You go into stock photography houses these days, and the big ones that buy catalogs every day, that's what they do. They acquire catalogs, and still people's needs are not being met because they aren't seeing the authentic imagery that they're looking for from today, or they're not seeing it in a geographically dispersed way. And our capabilities already serve that need. You can drop a pin on a map and ask for people wearing Burberry scarves and get them from all over the city or all over the country or all over the world. So the idea that we can explore kind of the world via video is already a capability within our system, and pretty easy. What I think you kind of leapt to, which is, if you ever saw my pitch deck, went on day one of Stringer, was really this capability is a window to the world, and it has so many applications, whether it's animators trying to figure out how a pickle falls off a counter, or, people trying to take a look at how global climate change is impacting specific regions. That's just the application of it. What we have created is the capability. And then, of course, our next step is just the go-to-market plan for every capability and every vertical that we attach ourselves to.
One last question, and then I'll throw over to my partner Brian. These days people are very concerned about fake news and the use of media to tell stories, basically. And it strikes me that one could view your business as being a supplier to anyone who wants to spin imagery into a story that could be fake news or real fake news or propaganda or whatever. Is that at all a concern of yours? Do you feel some sense of social responsibility for how your products are used, or are you basically supplying the raw material and counting on the ethical behavior of the client base?
For right now, we work with major corporations and major media companies. And so we believe that they have ethics and standards in place that is a driving force for them. Personally, I think that's really important. And I've always said we will sell video to anyone that uses it well and ethically. And so what I would say is at this point, we haven't had customers that approach us who are trying to kind of spin off kind of fake news or propaganda, or honestly, just pure agenda-driven quote unquote journalism, right? Yep. And so that's the good news. That's why we charge money for it. That's a nice barrier to entry for any customer. A lot of folks who are kind of living in their own world really don't also have the capital to kind of come in and do this. That being said, there are plenty of people with capital that have certain agendas, and we understand it. But that's just not our customer base now.
Yeah, that was an interesting question, John. I was just thinking about certain last names on a certain political spectrum that could have a lot of fun with something like this.
Right.
Or maybe not fun, but certainly have an agenda.
But we don't choose to. What I would say is we really haven't been approached by those sorts of organizations. And if that were to come to play, I'm a journalist, so at heart, and so I have no desire to ever spread rumor around the world.
Yes, thank you, and also that wasn't an invitation for anyone watching to challenge Lindsay on this subject.
I'm here all night.
To Paige Musto, this is the company's called Stringer without an E. It's STRINGR.com. Gregarious will share that in the stream. So I have a question for you, because there's so many applications for this, and I know that you've shared some of them, but obviously journalism is one that is a no-brainer. But in a time where citizen journalism has sort of had to step up in the absence of traditional journalism for capturing, what's really happening in real time, do you see that there is an appetite finally now on the buy side for traditional journalist sites or emerging journalist sites?
I think, at least for us, there always has been an appetite for what we provide. And because it takes that concept of citizen journalism to the next step. When you go into our platform, it's just not somebody who submitted a video that has something interesting going on in it. It is somebody who their name, their phone number. You can pick up the phone and you can call them. They have been verified by us to capture that footage. And so let's put it into real terms, because an interpretive dance for this kind of stuff doesn't work that well. Let's just take about like the events at the Capitol a couple of weeks ago, right? A number of videos that the main major media was using came from people who were kind of part of that uprising and that surge into the building. That's not, there's the capturing of images, but then there's the consider the source piece of it too, right? Mm-hmm. And so you could take it as an eyewitness account, but even to call those folks citizen journalism would be a misnomer for sure. When you send our videographers, and they are people there for the expressed purpose of just capturing the imagery, and in a way have that agnostic point of view, that they're just going in there to shoot what's happening, not to basically showcase their point of view, right? So I think that's one of the kind of key things as you think about the concept of citizen journalism. Citizen journalism is really more about capturing what they see, and for us, what we are allowing is our customers to ask for it, for people to respond to those requests and shoot it, and for a transaction to take place. So there's a business arrangement in place, and I think it increases the propriety and the reliability of the footage that you're seeing.
I also love the proactiveness of that it introduces for storytelling. What are the stories that we want to tell? How do we want to tell them visually, and how do we want to see them captured? I also see this as, strangely enough, as an opportunity to sort of maybe, what's the right word? Deal with FOMO. It could be one way to do this. We see FOMO all over the place when we can't be somewhere and we want to experience this. And this might be sort of this FOMO experience company that now rises to sort of be this real time, not journalism, but sort of real time experience brand. Curious to see what are some of the most creative and unforeseen applications for Stringer that have made you smile.
One of the things that makes me smile about the platform is that we really can tell stories from anywhere because we've built a videographer base that is everywhere. So if you consider what major media has normally done is they think about trends. They want to tell stories that are applicable to most people, or they try to, or a large market of people. And then they go out their back door and shoot that story. Whereas for us, we can say, hey, let's go to a state that that people don't generally get heard. And so we could go to all the states in the middle, all the states on the edges, all the countries anywhere, and ask people what they think. And I think that is very delightful to me because what I learned as a journalist who traveled the country a good bit and was very lucky to do so is that there are many themes that bind us together. There's a lot of talk politically of kind of, the middle states thinking one way and the more, and the kind of the bigger, more populated states is on the edge thinking another. But what I found is that what people care about are largely similar. What I also found that through our platform is that we don't have to drive to the extremes to make a point. We can ask a lot of people the exact same question and we can start to hear about the gray areas. And so and it's all at the touch of a button, like regional request, ask people what they think about the outcome of the election, right? And so it's not just the archetypes of people that we kind of see on the Capitol steps or we see in Brooklyn even. It's different sorts of people getting kind of to speak their mind. And also just in pure B-roll, we are seeing people that don't look like show producers. We are seeing people that look like normal people of all races, of all socioeconomic backgrounds, because the barrier to entry to being one of our crowd videographers is low. You could submit video and then all of a sudden we're seeing people eat cereal from all over the country, but it's still so fun to just see how many people have a different take on the same concept. So I think that's one of the gorgeous things, whether it's news or producing a show, which we helped for MGM, which is just basically showcasing different people from diverse backgrounds. And I think more of that, if we're just talking about social good, is good for all of us. When the face of the same thing is ever changing, we realize that what we hold dear is quite similar.
I'm going to leave you with one last question, and maybe this could be a softball for business growth. Do you see opportunities for brands who now, with brand journalism or brand storytelling becoming more and more prominent, what's the opportunity that you want to share with them as they consider content strategies for this year, as they consider the new world that we're entering this year, and also the power that we've all seen of truly citizen-driven social media?
I think what I would share with brands is that diversity of voice is easily accomplishable using a tool like ours. And whether it's a diversity of voice within your own company and you're using our technology to gather the viewpoints from various business divisions, from various, outposts at your company, you can do that with purely our technology. And then there's diversity of voice if you're really trying to see what your product or what your service actually does in the real world. You, again, can use either our videographer network or our technology to gather that without it becoming this Madison Avenue style advertising campaign. You can really, and I think you started to see that as brands kind of took a look and continually take a look at influencers. They go to social media. They're trying to grab media that already exists. But what if they have a question they'd like to ask of the people who use their products, who work at their company, and they want to have that, they want to be agnostic and see what comes back? Ours is a product and a service that enables that.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Lindsay, I'm excited for you. I think this is a real great opportunity. I'm already thinking about ways that I can use this in my various lives. John, I'm sure you know plenty of organizations.
I want to echo that sentiment. I think that kind of the medium and long term business development thinking. I mean, obviously, you've got near and current priorities, but thinking about where this could go is really interesting. And I have to say, speaking for myself, this is one of the most interesting business ideas I've heard in a long time. So congratulations and good luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you, Lindsay.
All right.
Hey, John, that was a real nice way to end that conversation. Very, very optimistic, definitely creative, and super promising. I think now we're going to bring up a couple of friends. We originally were going to have separate conversations, but because they are also friends and they are working in similar facets of business, that it would be good to have them on to have a greater conversation. So I'll just go ahead and introduce them quickly, then turn it over to each of them to share a little bit more about their work and passion, and then we'll bring them in for conversation. So first up is Orchid Bertelsen. She's the head of digital innovation at Nestle, and someone I've known for many years, and actually one of the last people I saw in a business setting before the lockdown in San Francisco. And also we're going to introduce Kat Cole, who is the Chief Operating Officer and President for Focus Brands, based out of Atlanta, which I hate to admit this to everybody, but is the central hub for a show that I'm watching to stay preoccupied outside of everything else that's happening in the world. Married at First Sight. Welcome to the show, Orchid and Kat, because nothing says innovation like that show. So before we jump in, Orchid, maybe share with us a few bits about you that we should all know.
Yeah, sure. I mean, thank you so much for having us. Yeah, it's funny because things have changed quite quickly, even in the last few months. So I'm head of digital strategy and innovation for Nestle USA, a collection of about 45 brands. So hopefully some of your household favorites, I can't go on a show without plugging our brands. So hopefully, you're really loving DiGiorno and Toll House and, Pellegrino and Perrier. So my job is to create the roadmap and really set the vision for the emerging technology that we're going to test out, what brands we're going to do that with, and then if successful, how do we scale that across the portfolio? So, again, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, of course, Orchid. Looking forward to our conversation now, and also our conversation on Clubhouse later this afternoon. And Kat, please share with us a bit about what you're working on at Focus.
Yeah, well, I wrapped up a 10-year career at Focus Brands at the beginning of the year. So
okay.
Yeah, very exciting. So I was president and COO for 4 years. And prior to that, at Focus Brands, president of Cinnabon, group president of the company. And so have built brands all around the world, 65 countries through franchising, retail, manufacturing, e-com, CPG, truly omni-channel brand building, but rooted in brick and mortar franchising around the world. Today, I am an advisor and investor in consumer brands, as well as a board member for companies like Milk Bar and Slice, and a SPAC called Human Co. SPAC, and several other things up and coming.
Wow.
Are you even cool if you don't SPAC these days? I mean, I think it's awesome.
All about the SPACs.
All right, maybe having you two on at the same time wasn't the best idea, or maybe it is the greatest idea. So let's take it from there. Kat, I mean, I'll start with you. That's a big move, and would love to hear your vision now for 2021 and what made you make this move, and the value you're bringing to the organizations you're partnering with.
Yeah, my departure from Focus was actually in the works for quite some time. I thought it would have happened in year 7 or 8. That's a nice tenure with the company, but I kept getting sucked back in for all kinds of reasons. We bought Jamba Juice in a take private transaction. And so taking a public company private, integrating it into the corporation, moving the headquarters, evolving the strategic plan for a more healthful brand was incredibly energizing for me. It was just great professional experience, and it was a ton of fun. So that re-engaged me. And then I realized I had a lot of work to do across the company in elevating certain leadership roles. And so I dedicated the next 2 years to promoting and developing new presidents. At the peak, I had 9 presidents of these global businesses reporting to me. So that's a lot of responsibility to make sure the teams are as strong as they can be and be set up for the future. And a new CEO joined Focus at the beginning of 2020. And I really thought, okay, now we've got all this great talent and my job is done here. It's time for me to go on to my next chapter, which always in my mind was what I'm living now, helping other people build their businesses through investing, advisory, and board work, at least for a season before I go jump right into running something else big. But with a new CEO, I just delayed those plans a little bit. I wanted to get him fully onboarded. I care about the company emotionally and financially. I care about the company. And then COVID hit 4 weeks after he started. And it was a call to lead. I'm so glad I wasn't watching my company, that company, go through 2020 from the sidelines. It was a real pleasure to lead through all of that transition and challenge. And then it was very clear that we needed to restructure the company in a positive way to get it ready for a growth sprint and ramping up the acquisition engine. So my last act there was pretty radically restructuring the company to set it up for its next phase of growth, promoting presidents to group presidents, promoting a ton of other people in building capabilities for the company. And then I thought my work is definitely done. It is time. So few people get to go out on top, truly. Some leave too early and miss the boat. Others think the grass is greener. Some stay way too long. And then they're asked, gently or not so gently to leave. And truly, I had the pleasure of leaving on top with a beautifully architected departure out in the open with the celebration of our teams. And I couldn't be more proud of the career, of how we wrapped it up, and of the company's potential for growth in the future. And that all set me up with these crazy, varied experiences of international growth, acquiring companies, taking what was a single channel brand and moving it to a second, a third, a fourth revenue channel through owned and partnering strategies. And that really helps me lean into adding those exact experiences as value to startups and high growth companies. So at Slice, the technology company that focuses on pizzerias, I help bring the perspective of the small business owner, but as well as the brand building and systematizing of bringing people together. At Milk Bar, I bring that omni-channel brand building experience connected to food, but really agnostic of food. And Human Co. as a SPAC, the team is looking to acquire or take public a phenomenal company in the wellness space, which is very likely to be a pure consumer brand. And so I bring that perspective there as well.
Wow. I mean, there's so much to unpack there. But Kat, I actually just want to just say something as a quick response, is that it is testament to you and your character and your leadership capabilities of just the story of you and Focus and setting the stage for where you are now. In fact, I could almost see a dedicated episode, John, I'm sure you'll agree with this, to you, Kat, of talking about leadership, especially now in a post-COVID world, and the importance of empowerment, the importance of dedication, the importance of true innovation, not just in technology, but also in mindset and opportunity. So that's incredibly impressive, and thank you for sharing that. And a lot of people, Kat, if you wouldn't mind just, or Orchid, just explaining SPAC to some of the folks who are confusing SPAC and Spanx in the comments, that would be fantastic.
I'm gonna let Kat do that. If you guys want to talk about GameStop and how many shares I'm buying, I'm happy to talk about shorting there, but I will let Kat answer that.
Yeah, so a SPAC, SPACs as an instrument, as a vehicle to go public, have been around for quite some time, popularized more over the last few years. And SPAC stands for Special Acquisition Corporation. They're also known as blank check companies. And essentially, it is a company that forms to raise capital that is then a public entity. So just the shell company or the blank check company is now listed on, in this case of Human Co. SPAC, listed on the NASDAQ. And then the team goes and looks for target companies that make sense for the investment thesis to take public via that vehicle. And the benefits for the target companies are pretty vast. One is it's a way to go public if that's what you believe is the right path for you as a company or a founder. It's a way to go public faster and with less cost. It's also a way to not just do that with financial stewards, but in the case of the human co-SPAC, to also have people with industry expertise, both in the SPAC company itself and on the board, that not only will help you become a great public company, but also simply add value to the company's path as well. And so that's a SPAC. It's a way for companies to go public, but also benefit from expertise, if it's a good SPAC, that the SPAC itself has accumulated.
Thank you for that, Kat. And also, John, we're going to have to apply for a certification program since everybody leaves this show much smarter than coming into it. Orchid, I do want to throw this over to you, but you distracted me with GameStop. And John and I were talking about a need to have a dedicated show on this. And coming into this episode, we were watching just the crazy shutdowns of the ability to buy on many of these citizen platforms. Just your quick thought, Orchid. How is what we saw in today's response to this trading an inhibitor to actual let's just say democratized innovation and democratized change?
Yeah, we're totally on the same page there. I've been trying to talk to everybody at work about this, and they're like, well, how are we selling more product? I was like, no, listen, like, this is fascinating. Because when we think about digital, pre-COVID, digital was something we were doing, right? Like, we were doing digital transformation. It was a separate work stream. And because of COVID, we are digital, right? And so what does that mean? And I think like the thing that I love the most about the internet and technology is that it's the ultimate democratizer. So I'm so happy you said democratized innovation because, you're really seeing this power shift, and we've seen it for years now where, starting with TV and large companies, it's really about push messaging. You're going to think about the brand, what I tell you to think about the brand. And we've seen that power dynamic shift, especially with the internet. Now, is the internet an equalizer? Does it provide equity? Like that's a very deep conversation. I don't know that we're quite there yet. But the reality is like this is a very much like a David and Goliath move in the year 2021, where you've started to see the financial industry. So fintech, of course, has been on the rise. The financial industry has known that they were about to be disrupted. But I think, because of regulations, especially in the financial industry, and then also other heavily regulated industries, those have historically been a moat to kind of slow down, the rebels, right? To borrow a term from Shopify. But, and so now I think what you're seeing is now that time has passed and Robinhood and I think public.com, I think I signed up for that today. But
a lot of people did.
What would have happened is that, they've kind of gotten through those hurdles and that obstacle course that regulation has actually set up in front of them. And now you're seeing true disruption in real time. Like, I hope I'm not exaggerating, but I think this is, a point in history where, I don't think anybody's crying for hedge fund managers these days, but like, seriously, like you're really seeing, all these people on a public forum like Reddit, and I love Reddit for so many reasons, but they have come together, they have strategized together, they have, really, consolidated their power, and they're fighting back in a meaningful way. This is the secret socialist inside of me. But anyway, I'm also like a deep capitalist. It's very troubling. But, I think that's what's so interesting about this whole GameStop situation.
And John, I want to make this much more interactive since it's a dynamic conversation here. So, but I'll just set it up for you, John, by asking you, Orchid, one quick question that isn't terribly quick, which is, you work with some small brands out there that are trying to compete here in some interesting markets. What does innovation look like for you on the horizon versus coming off of 2020?
That's a very good question. How innovation has changed, I think, as we look ahead, is it has to be consumer centric, and that's not different, but I think we tend to lose sight of that. So there are a couple of frameworks and models that my team uses. One of them, of course, is the Venn diagram from IDEO of long-term solutions of innovation sitting at the center of consumer desirability, technical feasibility, business viability. And it's really funny because I'm brought into a lot of conversations that I hate to be the person, but a lot of people jump to, can we build it? Can we make money off of it? Cool. And so I have to be the person to ask, do consumers want this? Like, what problem are we solving for? And we're like, that's a good question. I was like, it's not a good question. It's really the only question. I'm not dismissing, how important business viability is, because at the end of the day, if you build a solution that you can build that satisfies a consumer's need, and you're uniquely positioned to provide that solution, and yet it either doesn't save you money, it doesn't pay for itself, or it doesn't make money, the corporation's not going to continue to support it. That's just a reality of business. So I think, as we look towards the horizon with so many things changing, I think we can do a whole session on augmented intelligence, on human machine relationships. Things are just innovating and changing so quickly. And there's so much emerging technology out there, because I think there are a lot of things that were experimental that has finally hit an inflection point where they're going to start to scale and gain mass adoption. But I would push us to continue to think consumer centric, consumer first. What is the problem we're trying to solve for? Because technology and digital is merely a solution to that problem. It's not the end goal.
Yeah, excellent. Well said. John, please, over to you.
Well, I'm imagining a situation where you're at your place of work, wherever that might be, on your couch or in your office, and two people walk in, one of whom is an incumbent, representative of an incumbent organization that is managing a mature brand, and then someone who's an upstart, like the Lindsay, who we just had on with Stringer, who's, I think, going to kind of eat up a big chunk of the media world. Really interesting. What would you, Orchid, want them to know about the shifting digital landscape, given that it's a toolbox? What are two or three things? And then, Kat, what would you want them to know from your wealth of leadership and managerial experience? Your kind of the wisdom that you've accumulated during your tenure in these various positions. So maybe we'll start with Orchid. What would you want them to know?
I would want them to know that, no one has it all figured out. Okay.
Endless newbie, right? Kevin Kelly says we're all kind of beginners.
And again, the beautiful thing about digital and technology is that it's always changing. And so you're really, all the world's information is out there. So you're as good as you want to be is kind of my perspective. But no one has it figured out. So this idea of testing and learning and pivoting and evolving, that is something that they should, that is a competitive advantage, right? Startups are effectively a speedboat. Whereas incumbent companies are more of a cruise ship. I need to find a better analogy. It used to be the Titanic, and then
Super tanker.
Perfect. And so we just turn a little slower, but we do it at scale. And so I think continue to think about what is your competitive advantage, and digital helps you learn so much faster.
Yeah, but are there one or two specific examples of emerging digital technology that you think we all ought to be aware of? Because they're, you talked about things that are poised to scale. What interests you the most? Because you're out there with your antenna kind of.
Yeah. Two things on opposite ends of the spectrum. Social commerce. I've had a lot of conversations about this. Kat and I have had conversations about this. And it means a couple of different things. So one is, when you're on Instagram or TikTok, this frictionless commerce, right? Because then you start to look at which influencers and which creators can start to monetize off those platforms. You kind of shrink the marketing funnel from awareness to conversion. And then China kind of defines social commerce a little differently in terms of like group buying, like GameStop. See, all roads lead back to GameStop. And so China has a different definition of that. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I would argue flexible manufacturing, the ability to really create small batch products There are some companies that do that really well when they talk about limited edition flavor drops. And so that's really interesting from the food and beverage space.
What about spatial computing? Have you gotten into that at all?
No, but I love about it.
Well, it changes everything about the user experience. But that's for another conversation. We had Rob Scoble on to kind of evangelize for that. So, Kat, what about you? If we were to withdraw from your wisdom bank, what would you be saying to these people at these different ends of the evolutionary spectrum?
I love the question. I spend a lot of time in both of those ecosystems. And it's amazing how much more alike we all are than we are different. That is true for individuals, and it is true for size and scale of companies. Certainly at a foundational level of what makes growth go, whether you're a startup or a legacy institutional, large, mature company. So the first would be stay insanely close to your customer. To Orchid's point, it is the question. It is the foundation of all other decisions that becomes much more challenging as a company grows. The actual distance between the dots, between the leaders and the customers, expands greatly. The dynamics and the stories we tell ourselves and each other become more robust in a larger organization because there are other motivations at play, existing compensation systems that may or may not fit with a new innovation that's needed in an organization. But still finding a way to cut through that is possible, even for the largest organizations. And so my first piece of advice would be stay incredibly close to the customer. And likewise for the startup, 1 year later, if a high growth, brand new brand or company is getting started, something's different a year later than it was day one. And the question is, are they staying close, paying attention? They certainly can pivot more easily, to use Orchid's speedboat versus cruise ship analogy, but they still have to stay close. So that's one, stay close to the customer. The second, of course, is it's still all about people and team. And it doesn't matter how great the founder or the leader are. If the other leaders and influencers in the organization don't have the same shared vision and true north, aren't driving healthy cultural norms, it will become very difficult for the company to make the most of the opportunities in front of them. And then the third would be the fact that innovation always outpaces regulation, and innovation always outpaces the corporation. By definition, it is new, therefore it is different than what the current systems were built for. And just that awareness helps a company, whether it's a team of 5 or a team of 500,000, understand that bumps and challenges in responding to the market are inevitable. You literally cannot avoid them. But there are very simple questions to ask and certain structures of feedback loops that optimize the likelihood that you work through those bumps more quickly. And I'll tie it back to GameStop because why not? It is today. That's a perfect example. Innovation in community and connection and democratized access of both information, connections, and financial instruments and resources. That innovation is radically outpacing regulation and the corporations that have been the gatekeepers for quite some time. And it may look like David Goliath. I think it's more the clash of the titans. I actually think the democratized access communities, the Wall Street bets, the crypto community, all the many examples of decentralization of institutions, all of those examples, if you put their power together as evidenced by what's going on right now, they are not David, right? They are a titan in and of themselves, and the world's just not set up for that. So we're going to go through some pretty visible change because these tectonic plates that were moving sort of slowly just rushed over each other, and now we're seeing the outcome. And I think that's true in consumer products. It's true in big companies and small companies competing, and it's clearly true in financial institutions.
We need different nomenclature almost, because it isn't about the giant and the alliance of the little guys. It's about a different kind of titanic force. So I think you're absolutely right. So one other question occurs to me, and this is also kind of an imagination exercise. So imagine that you're called in to see President Biden, and he says, America has a branding problem. Our brand is tarnished, and we have stood for certain things, and we need to revitalize our brand. What would each of you say in terms of a piece of advice or kind of a to-do list? Let's see, judging from facial expressions, maybe we should start with Kat first and then go to Orchid.
So I'd start with be, do, say. Before we try to go tell the world we're different, we're better, let's just be different and better. Put our head down, build a better product, build a better system. When we have wins, celebrate those internally and externally to reframe the narrative. That's the B part. Then start holding that standard of ourselves and those we do business with, and that's holding norms and saying, all right, now that we've done it ourselves, we're going to start to express that this is the way we do things, and then say, right? Then broadcast the progress, the metrics, the updates, and repeatedly acknowledge that we are on a journey. I think the expectation of any nation or leader to be, I'll use a few words, perfect, finished, done, is a dated expectation. And being really good at talking about the journey we're on, the direction we're headed, not the roadmap. The roadmap's going to change every day. The compass direction, like where are we headed? And we may wiggle our way there, but we're making progress there in all areas, social issues, financial and economic issues, education, all the bedrock of our country. That's in each place we have to be, do, say, rinse, wash, repeat.
And how bad do you think our branding problem is right now from a citizen perspective?
I think it is not beyond correction. I know of some brands that are pretty far down the path that even the most creative of leadership and operating and branding gurus probably wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. We're not in that camp, right? There is a crisis of confidence in many communities. Trust is the foundation of any brand. And there's a crisis of confidence from various communities to various institutions. But much like when I took over Cinnabon at the heart of the recession, where the business was struggling, it was in malls and airports. When people don't have discretionary income, they don't shop and they don't travel. So sales were depressed. The franchisees were losing confidence in the business model and in their future. But what was still insanely strong was the quality of the product and the love for the brand. And I do believe, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but there is a parallel between Cinnabon and the United States right now in that example where the business model is broken. It is not working for where we are today, but the brand is still beloved. There is still belief, or people wouldn't be trying to make it work. And so it's going to take incredibly strong, but also creative and collaborative leadership to make the most of it. But we're nowhere near beyond repair. In fact, I think as tough as it is, almost makes it easier for more people to acknowledge that work needs to be done.
Well, I hope President Biden is listening. Orchid, do you have any follow-up?
It's always a double-edged sword going after Kat. So no, I mean, yeah, I completely agree. And I think part of it too, just to continue, I mean, I feel like we're hammering this point home quite a bit, but, utilize technology, right? And I think that, but not in the surveillance state way of using technology, but really thinking citizen first. Like, even the vaccine rollout, we're seeing this, like, every state is trying to replicate their system for how to sign up, things like that. Like, there's an opportunity to centralize that. There's an opportunity to design solutions, like, not to complain about taxes, but the IRS, they know how much taxes you owe. And so why is the process, when we think about human-centric design, why is the process so hindering what we all want the end goal to be, which is that everybody wants to pay the accurate amount of taxes? And so I think, the overall government, and this is away from branding, but just its usage of technology and how it serves its community and its citizens, I think that they should start to really design with the citizen in mind rather than from rules and regulation and government and compliance first.
Well, if wishes were horses, as they say, but but I definitely hear what you're saying, and I'm sure even people in government would hear it very clearly and loudly as well.
Hey,
Brian,
John, on that,
yeah.
I want to just add, and I apologize because I'll probably have to drop off before we say formally say goodbye. You know, I often think that as someone who's a big believer in human-centered design, and I've tried to live that in everything that I do, and of course, it makes things more challenging. It always means that you're challenging your own conventions and beliefs, and so there's never really a comfort zone. I tend to see an Orchid Cat. I'd love to hear your take on this. That executives and government officials all might believe that they are representing their citizens or their users or their customers, when in fact that they're not even close to understanding who they are or being them, and therefore making decisions for people like themselves out of a bias and not necessarily the people that they're claiming to represent. So what is it that we can do to help these individuals make a shift in perspective and mindset without having to go through this crazy, judo match to help them see what might already be within them, which is intention and purpose, to wake up the next morning and see the world differently. And I know it's just a small ask.
Yeah, I know you both have a hard stop, so we'll say goodbye to you as you drop off. But I mean, I think it's a great question, and I think it comes down to a couple of things. I think one, to your point, is the acknowledgement that we are not our customer, right? There was an exercise when I was on the creative agency world for a client where we were doing a marketing summit. And we took a poll of marketers and said, hey, where was your last grocery store splurge? Where was your last vacation? And then we did the same with our target audience, with our true consumers. And I mean, not to tease them, but the brand marketers, of course, we picked like the most ridiculous ones. Like, oh, I had, grass-fed New Zealand lamb, or, I went to Bora Bora. Whereas our true consumers were like, hey, I took a bus from Texas to visit my family in Chicago. Or, a splurge for me was like the special limited edition, like Ghirardelli peppermint squares during Christmas time. And so I think the first acknowledgement and to truly design for people is that acknowledge that we are not our consumers very often. And then the second one is a little more tactical, but it's about misaligned incentives, right? So anytime you see an organization make a decision that's based on the short term and, kind of really go against, what they've been talking about in terms of like this vision of innovation, I would chalk it up to, misaligned incentives. When executives are compensated against short-term goals, that means that their decision-making, whether deliberate or not, are based on optimizing against like their short-term gains. So I think one is an acknowledgement of who you are and who you are not. And then second is looking at the incentive structure to make sure that your incentives are aligned with, what your end goals are.
Yeah, I was going to really focus on those same 2 points, know who the customer is, and no one elected representative in most communities can actually, even if they are close to their customer, really represent the people in those communities. They're too diverse. And so being honest about the few issues that matter most to most of the stakeholders and advocating for those with the best of intentions is a build on the concept of first stay close to your customer and be honest about who they are versus who you are. And I went straight to the same place you did, Orchid, which is incentives. The fact that money is at play, whether it's money for an ongoing role in an elected position without term limits, or if it is simply the fundraising money that is at play, that then still feeds that other incentive, that is clearly a factor. And if bonus structures in a company were built for the former structure of the business model and new innovation has the potential to drive the business, and that is not fitting in with what will compensate the individuals in the company, there will be resistance to that much needed innovation. And I think the same is true in elected office. So sorry that we can't chat longer, but it was so great to talk with you guys.
Yeah, well, we always have the option of a sequel. I mean, we've raised some enormous juicy issues like SPACs and GameStop and
anytime
the future of democracy and the new titans and so forth and so on. So let me just say on behalf of both of us, it's a real pleasure to have you both here. And, it speaks to the power of a sophisticated brand awareness and consciousness in terms of where it can add value, beyond even what it is that we spy on the shelves of our local Whole Foods or Kroger's or whatever. So thank you very much for being here. Hope to see you again.
Thank
and
you
Gregarious.
so much.
Yeah, thank you. And then Gregarious, why don't you play us out? Let me just, before we get played out, or not played out, but remind you all that we will be back next Thursday for another show. Please check out intersectionslive.com. And with that, thank you for being here.